bucket.
How has sugar changed in the past years?
You going first, Rhett?
Oh, I'm not sure, but it's changed tremendously. I mean, going back to when we toddled over to the sugar house, it's a lot more technology. Like, we were strictly with buckets.
It was very simple when we did it. We went out, first started with scattering buckets early on, and then the men came and they didn't have any big tapping machines. They just had the hand bits to pour the hose for the spouts. And we followed along and hung up the buckets, put the covers on the buckets. And that was the first step before the sap started to run.
And you certainly didn't start early.
No.
Not in Dad's time.
Oh, no.
No,
No.
he would frown on this deal.
Right.
But the weather has changed, so.
No, but not
Yes.
enough to account for
It was
the
late.
change.
It would be the middle of March anyway, before we start getting buckets. Always with the horses and sleds. They didn't have any drays or anything at that time. It was just the sleds for the snow. I was the driver. I used to drive the horses.
About how long does it take you to get the final product?
Well, I was just going to, my reply to that first question is that Teresa and I both drove horses, and the men stayed in the woods, and you had a sled with a big tub on it, and then fill it up, and then we'd take it to the sugar house and have it dumped, and then return back, and that was our job all day long.
That's when we got to the stage of gathering the sap.
Right. Oh, yes, that's where you were at when you, that's right, so yes, right.
So everyone had a different role that all
Yes.
pitch in and help.
Right,
Yeah.
Whatever you seem to do easiest is what you did.
Yeah.
right. We helped to
Anybody ever asked you to.
get the wood up too, because the wood was in the
Yeah.
shed, and they made a carrier that we loaded onto and then push it in behind the evaporator to, that's what they used for the heat.
When we grew up, we had the main sugar house over behind our parents' home, behind the stone house, through the big woods. And then we had a small sugar house up in the upper woods, we called it. And when we were little, our dad used to boil up in the little sugar house a lot, and it was slower because you had a smaller rig and it took longer, so he'd boil at night. And a lot of times we'd stay up at night with him and we'd walk home, and we thought that was a pretty fun thing to do, because we'd be walking home by 11 o'clock at night.
Right. By the moonlight.
But Dad liked to have us there.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
Yes, he did.
right.
Yes.
And we often would bring the
He'd tell us
meals
we
to
could
the,
curl up and go to sleep, but just stay there.
Yeah.
Right.
But we'd help him get the wood up and stay with him.
Probably scrape the, was it niter off the sap too?
Yes.
That's one of those jobs that usually when you start growing a little bit you can do.
oh, yes,
And we also had a basic, big, like, filters for the
yes,
syrup when it was made in the sugar house, and our job would be to take the filters down to the brook and rinse them out and wash them and bring them back so they'd be clean for the next round.
And that was a cool task.
Yes.
You're going back when there's ice on the road.
And that's, it takes quite a bit of time to do that.
yes,
And
yes, it
you
does.
scrape the niter and whatnot off the inside of the filter by turning it inside out and
Right,
giving it a few rinses and,
yeah, so we'd have buckets of water to do it into.
yeah.
It was way back in the days before ROs, so that was a lot
Yes.
slower process of boiling
Yes,
sap.
40 gallons of
Make the
sap
syrup.
for 1 gallon of syrup.
Yeah, it would take a lot longer to boil than it does today.
Because now they have made changes, and they have a machine which takes out a lot of the water and changes it from 1.5% sugar to 20%. So it's a shorter boiling time, which is great.
You
have
girls
to be
are-
careful.
Excuse me.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead, we need to interrupt you.
Well, that's okay, you know, but, and they also have the new lines, and all the trees have buckets, because they lines that they use now. And they have a vacuum system which also improves the running of the sap because it encourages it to run. And so that system of lines. They have a smaller hole. It's a 7/16. I mean, it was 7/16, so we did this about to now it's 5/16. So the life of the tree is protected and not like that.
Back when we were growing up, we hadn't heard of
No,
lines, so just buckets.
right. Right, we didn't have any larger empty gathering places in the woods either.
It's a big run, buckets are really over, you just have to gather fast.
You couldn't waste any sap, believe me.
Yes.
Yes.
Riding horses, you were careful around the sugar house because they wanting to head to the barn. So
Right.
it might be hard to make that turn going into the sugar house through back to the woods.
Yes.
Yeah, and then sometime when you're getting towards the end of the day, they like to go a little faster on the way down through, so they thought they were getting done, and you kinda had to hold back so you didn't,
Yes.
you know, any of your sap didn't splash out.
Oh, yes.
Right, definitely.
What kinds of technology did you use?
It was pretty basic back then. It was just the buckets, bringing the sap to the sugar house, and they had the draw, that they had the hydrometer to tell when the syrup was done enough. The syrup was just right, and then they drew that off. Everything was just done by hand.
Right.
And emptied into the barrels for packing. No high technology at all.
Right.
And everyone had metal spouts,
Yes.
that you, like, used to, you know, rinse in pails, and some people
Oh, yes.
used to, turn them in an old ringer, right? To dry them out after they washed them in a spring, after they were done.
We had that.
No, we did them on the back porch at home.
Dried in the sunshine at the end of the season.
Right.
Yep.
Sitting back porch.
Right.
In the middle of the sugaring season, if it got windy, the covers might blow off the buckets, and again, you'd have to go through the woods and find the buckets, the covers, and put them back on the buckets, so that if the rain came, it didn't get into the buckets.
How many people in your family sugar?
Yes. That's an easy answer. Right.
Everyone.
Where did your family sugar?
Where?
Yeah.
Well, right where we grew up, and the main sugar house was right behind the house where we were. So it would probably take 5 or 10 minutes to run over to the sugar house. The pan that was boiling, we'd have to bring your dinner over at noon.